Alright, I will admit this isn't the first video I've done where I share scary stories, but this is a special one. I have found my absolute favourite short scary stories that I believe are perfect for telling or listening to in the dark. These stories leave people reaching for the light and just putting on a nice cartoon, and that's just one of them. Today I've got 10. Let's see how many of you guys can make it through. My name is Danny Burke and this is the top 10 scary stories to tell in the dark. Just before we get into this, guys, I want to quickly shout out the short scary stories subreddit. I got a lot of the stories from there. There's some fantastic writers and creators and people sharing real stories on there, so go and check them out. Starting off at number 10 now, we have Red. This one comes from Godzilla on Reddit. He said he once checked into a hotel a few kilometers from Kiev in Ukraine. It was very late and he was very tired. After booking a room at the desk, he was given a room number key. The woman at the desk stopped him as he went up the stairs. "One more thing," she said, "there is one room here without a number on that floor. It's always locked. Don't look in there." He nodded sleepily and headed upstairs, falling asleep instantly on his bed. He awoke though in the middle of the night to the sound of trickling water. It was coming from the room on the other side of the hallway. He opened the door and saw the room opposite was the exact same one that had no number. He opened the door and saw the room opposite was the one that had no number. Ignoring the woman's advice, he banged on the door. No response. He tried again. No response. He looked in the keyhole and saw nothing but red, just a deep, hazy scarlet. The water was still trickling. He went down to the front desk to complain. The woman's face dropped. She told him slowly that there was nobody in that room ever since the murder. A woman was killed in there by her husband many years ago. Her skin was pale, her hair dark brown, and her eyes, when she died, were a red, a deep, hazy scarlet. Next up at number 9 now, we have Morse code. This one comes from Confra. He said he once lived in a small building in the middle of his city. He ended up moving out because of a strange man who lived across the hallway. The man mostly kept to himself, but around midnight there was always a strange noise coming from his apartment. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. It was a bumping sound, like someone walking around in heels, but muffled, as if someone was trying to keep it quiet. After a few days, he realized the pattern was always the same, like a record playing over and over again. It went on for weeks, then months, then almost a full year, always the same bumps for hours at night. It was only years later, living somewhere else, that something clicked. He was helping his daughter with homework. She was learning about Morse code. She knocked on the table with her knuckles and a shiver ran down his spine. He recognized it as the pattern he had heard all those years ago. When he asked her what it meant, she laughed. "That's the easiest one, Daddy," she said. "It's the one to call for help." Moving on to number 8 now, we have Charlie. This one comes from Reddit user Horror in Pure Form. I'm just going to read this one exactly as they wrote it because it really deserves it. "I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky for having a brain where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom likely far surpasses mine, considering he's confined to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course, they did at first. Charlie has been back home several times, each shorter in duration than the last. Every time without fail, it all starts again. The neighborhood cats with gouged out eyes showing up in his toy chest, my dad's razors found dropped on the baby slide in the park across the street, Mom's vitamins replaced by bits of dishwater tablets. My parents are hesitant now, using last chances sparingly. They say his disorder makes him charming, makes it easy for him to fake normalcy, and to trick doctors who care for him into thinking he is ready for rehabilitation, that I will just have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he is back." Next up at number 7 now, we have Counting. This one was submitted to BuzzFeed. A man said his daughter woke him before midnight one night. He and his wife had picked her up from her friend Sally's birthday party earlier that night, brought her home and put her to bed. His wife went into the bedroom to read to her while he fell asleep watching the game. He awoke to feel his daughter tugging on his shirt sleeve. "Daddy," she said, "guess how old I'm going to be next month?" "I don't know, honey," he said as he slipped on his glasses. "How old?" She smiled and held up 4 fingers. The parents stayed up all night asking their daughter the same question for hours, but she refused to tell them where she got those 4 fingers from. Moving on to number 6 now, we have guardians. This is a story from Dark Alligator. One day, a man awoke to a huge insect-like creature looming over his bed. It twitched and jerked its head, staring right down at him. He screamed and ran out of the room. When he sheepishly came back though, the insect was gone. That didn't make sleeping again easier though, and he stayed up all night wondering if it was a dream. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to see one of the huge insects placing a plate filled with food on the floor. It then backed away from him. He ate the food, confused but content. Perhaps this was the beginning of a bizarre relationship? As well as cooking, the creatures poured baths for him and began to tuck him into bed. He began to worry they were fattening him up. After one greasy breakfast gave him heartburn though, they actually replaced it with fruit. It seemed that they cared about him. One night, he awoke to gunshots and screaming. He raced downstairs to find a decapitated burglar being devoured by the insects. They were protecting him. One morning, the creatures wouldn't let him leave his bedroom. He lay down on the bed, confused but trusting them. After hours of lying there, he felt a pain through his body. It felt like his stomach was full of razor wire and it was somehow moving. The insects chittered excitedly among themselves as his pain got worse. It was only when his skin began to bulge that he realized the insects hadn't been protecting him, they had been protecting their young. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the sound of silence. This one comes from Reddit user Doverhawk. She said after a lifetime of being deaf, her best friend just received cochlear implants. When he woke up from the surgery, they all stood around him. His wife was the first one to say anything. He heard her voice and at once began to cry. They all took turns speaking, letting him hear their voices and names, and with each word they said, he became more emotional. When they were all finished, silence hung in the room. He looked up at her and asked her what that sound was. It took a moment to understand what he was saying, and when she understood, she told him that he was hearing silence. He shook his head. "This isn't silence," he said slowly, hearing his own voice for the first time. "I've been hearing silence all my life, and this is different." A sound came from just outside the hospital room, and he perked up immediately. "Isn't that silence?" They all exchanged looks of trepidation around the room before she spoke. "No," she said slowly, "that was the sound of someone screaming." Moving on to number 4 now, we have Mother. This one comes from Reddit user Whoever Fights Monsters. She said that when she and her sister Betsy were kids, their family lived for a while in an old farmhouse. They loved exploring the dusty corners and climbing the apple tree in the backyard. Their favourite part was the ghost in the house. They named her Mother because she seemed kind and nurturing. Some mornings she and Betsy would wake up and find a cup of tea by their beds. They felt the ghost had left them there, worried that they would get thirsty in the night. Among the house's original furnishings was an antique wooden chair, which they kept against the back wall of the living room. Whenever they were watching TV or playing a game, Mother would inch the chair forward towards them. Sometimes she managed to move it all the way to the very middle of the room. They always felt sad putting it back against the wall, as they felt Mother just wanted to be near to them. Years later, long after they moved out, they found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse's original occupants. One of them was a widow who murdered her 2 children by giving them each a cup of poisoned milk before bed. Then she hung herself. The article included a photo of the farmhouse's living room with the woman's body hanging from a beam. Beneath her, knocked over, was the same old wooden chair placed right in the middle of the room. Next, number 3 now, we have the wallpaper. This one comes from Reddit user BatOutOfHell821. She said that her and her boyfriend once bought an old house. He took control of any new construction that was needed, converting the kitchen into the master bedroom for example. She was on wallpaper removal duty and had her work cut out. The previous owner had covered every single wall and ceiling. Removing it was a real chore, but she got into the rhythm of it eventually. It began to feel satisfying, like peeling off a sunburn. She began to play a game, seeing what the longest piece she could peel off was before it finally ripped. She noticed that under a corner section of paper in every single room was a person's name and a date. Curiosity got the better of her one night and she decided to Google one of the names and discovered that the person was actually a missing person. The name and the date matched perfectly. She didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, she made a list of all the names and dates. Her face got paler with each name that matched with a missing person. They called the police, who cornered off the whole area. She overheard 2 of the officers talking in one of the rooms. One said, "Yeah, it's definitely human." "Human?" she asked. "What's human?" Ma'am, they said, what you were peeling off the walls wasn't newspaper. We're going to give this all to the coroner. Next up at number 2 now we have Seeing Dad. This is a great story from the General G on Reddit. Real or not, it's very creepy, and he told it like this. Every day I see my father at work. He pretends like he doesn't see me, but I know he does. I try to do the same, but that doesn't really pan out well either. When you're at work, you gotta be on top of your game. So I do my best to just get on with what I'm supposed to do and get my job done. I can feel him watching me. Good. I want him to see how different I am from him. I'm not in your shadow. I'm my own person. I know what you're wondering. Do others know that he is my old man? Hard to say really. If they don't, I have no plans to correct them. If they do, well, there is nothing I can do about it. We are all under the shadow of our parents for the duration of most of our lives, whether we like it or not. In some cases, it just happens to be more obvious than others. Our parents help us define who we are. It's only a question of whether you follow their example or run as fast as you can in the other direction. For example, if you have a drug abusing parent who happens to murder a newlywed couple that gets stranded on the side of the road when you are only 10 years old, that might make one inclined to perpetuate a similar kind of violence, or it might make you decide to be a prison guard so that you can make sure they and others just like them can't do it anymore, much like I did. And finally, number 1 now, we have Giggle. This is another one submitted to Reddit by a woman who said that one night she rushed out of her house to catch the opening act at her local bar's music night. After a few drinks, she realized her phone wasn't in her pocket. She checked the table that they were sitting at, it wasn't there. She tried the bar, the bathrooms, no luck. In the end, she gave up and decided to use her friend's phone to call her own. After 2 short rings, someone answered. Hello? She said. The other end of the line was silent. Then she heard a low, raspy giggle before the phone hung up. The person didn't answer again. She eventually decided to just go home. When she got to her bedroom, there she found her phone, lying on the table by her bed, right where she had left it. Ooh, well, was I right? Were they not pretty creepy? Come on, if you're watching this, then you must be one of the people who made it all the way through to the end of the video. Well done, go and brag about it in the comment section below, and let me know what kind of video would actually scare you. I'll make sure I do that next on the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching. As always guys, my name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next one.